So you finally came.
Welcome to the House of Truth. For the next half hour, I will control everything you see. And remember, under my roof, all truth is masked by fiction.
So come now. Judge for yourself if the stories you are about to see are true or false.
My name is Bill Ramsey, and this is my story. It's a story of a nightmare that lasted for 9 years. It's a story that made the tabloid press call me the Werewolf of Southend. This is the way they told the story, and this is the way I want to tell my side of things. The problem first began in 1981. We was coming back from Billericay in the works van. A couple of chaps and myself sitting in the back, and suddenly I started to snarl and growl at them, even try to bite one of them. They thought I was mucking about, and as I didn't really know what was happening to me, I just made out that I had been. Nothing else happened for a couple of years, till one day in December 1983, I suddenly started to get some severe chest pains. I was concerned it might have been my heart. So I brought myself here to the hospital and sort of hoped they'd check them out. Well, while I was in the process of running some tests, taking my pulse, blood pressure, I let out a growl and started to snarl at the nurses and even bit one of them. And so they had to sedate me and they called the police, who then rushed me off to Rumwell Hospital. I never used to remember anything during the attack, so I just sort of blacked out. And the worst nightmare of it all was waking up and thinking, oh God, what have I done this time? Have I hurt anybody? The feelings prior to attack were too devilish to try to explain to anybody. They just sort of, your stomach tearing apart, and the painful feeling of rage and anger that build up inside you. You can't describe it to anybody. It's too much to describe. I had a rather bad attack in July 1987, and the police had to lock me away in a cell.
I was inside the police station when I heard the call for assistance. I came out and I saw Sergeant Fisher actually on the ground with his back close to the wall, with Bill Ramsey sitting on his chest with his hands around his throat. I called for further assistance, and it took about 5 or 6 officers to restrain Ramsey and to get him under control. Ramsey was actually placed in the cell, and he was no trouble for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. Then he started to make banging noises. Officers came to see what the problem was. It was then discovered that Ramsey had actually got his head plus his arm and shoulder through this aperture and was striking out at the officers. What in actual fact he'd done, his hands were formed in the shape of a claw, and every time somebody came anywhere near the cell door, he would make a lunge at them. And at this time he was also curling his lips and growling. Bill Ramsey's conduct at this time was so violent that the police surgeon was called, and he administered an injection. Bill Ramsey continued thrashing out with his arm through the aperture of the door, and it took another injection given by the doctor before he was in fact subdued. The fire brigade, having been called also, then soaked him with soft soap, and it took 4 firemen and 2 policemen quite considerable effort to get him out, his head and his shoulders, through this hole.
And it was after this attack that the national press got hold of the story, and started to ban the word werewolf about all over their front pages. You can't imagine the horror of looking on the front of the national press and seeing you've been called a werewolf. It got so I was frightened to go out and face the world. They'd all read this stuff. I mean, what are they thinking about me? I just didn't want to go out at all. The press asked me all sorts of questions. They asked if the moon had anything to do with the attacks, and I told them, of course, it didn't. They said, did I turn hairy or grow big teeth during the attacks? And again, I said, no, of course not. Then they asked me about lycanthropy. I told them I'd already explored this avenue through medical books, and it simply described it as a mythical disease where a man turns into a wolf, and well, that didn't seem to suit my symptoms anyway, so even after telling them all this, the press just wrote what they were going to anyway, and it still implied I was a werewolf at the end of it all. This is Rumwell Mental Hospital in Wickford, where the police brought me after a number of attacks. On one occasion, I was detained here for 28 days to see if they could run tests and try and get to the bottom of some mental condition I might have, but nothing seemed to tally with my symptoms in any way, so one suggested it was probably alcoholism, but that didn't tally with previous attacks either, because I'd had attacks when I hadn't been anywhere near alcohol of any kind, so I think they finished up just as baffled and confused as I was, and we really got no further. By this time, the attacks were getting much worse, and they were getting far more frequent. So once I got to recognise the symptoms of an attack, I thought the best thing was to take myself down to the police station and get them to lock me up for a couple of hours, and at least that way I had the satisfaction of knowing I wasn't going to harm any member of the public. As a result of the publicity in the national press, I was asked to make a short film for American television, and it's a result of this that some psychic researchers, or Ghostbusters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, contacted me from America and said they thought that I was a classic case of demonic possession. Well, I didn't know what to make of that, but they asked me to go to America and be exorcised. They said that would be the cure. Well, we'd tried everything else, so I thought, well, I had nothing else to lose, and after all, it was a free trip to the States if it didn't work. The morning of the exorcism, I was petrified. We drove off to the church, and I was taken and sat in a chair at the front, and I was faced by Bishop McKenna, who started the ceremony with a very solemn prayer in Latin, and I just sat there, and suddenly I began to shake, and I thought, God, something's happening. He's bringing on an attack. Something's going on here, and I had an attack, and apparently he commanded the devil to leave, and I came around with feeling that some kind of evil had gone from me. That was 8 months ago now, and thank God nothing's happened since. I have to believe something went on in that little whitewash chapel in Connecticut that is going to leave me in peace now and let me live just a normal life again. It's been 8 months now, and, well, I haven't had an attack since then, and it's lovely just to be able to carry on normal life, doing the things that everybody does, without the fear of one of these attacks wrecking everything for you. Just to go on and have a pint down the pub, just to do the normal things of life once again.
Seeing, they say, is believing. Or is it?
That was a well-made film.
What do you think of the part when the policeman said that he actually had his arm and his head and
That was
his
a very
shoulder
small
through
hole.
the door?
That was a very small hole.
Didn't you find that a bit unbelievable? I mean,
Yeah.
the guy looked quite well built. How's he going to get himself through that door? I don't actually believe it. I think it's untrue. But in a way, I do.
Much as I would like to believe that there is a werewolf in Southend, I just feel like if the guy's straight up about the kind of things that were going on with him, then he wouldn't have been kind of sitting in a studio somewhere doing a little film about it.
I just can't get my head around it, really. I don't think somebody's going to who looks like a werewolf is actually going to be... I think people that are going to be werewolves are going to be people that don't look like werewolves.
Right.
Like, I think he was just too well cast.
So you think it's not real because it seemed real?
Yeah. But
See, look, it's messing your head up, Liz.
Yeah, what kind of a mixed-up argument is that? So, but I'll go for it not being real. But I think I'll regret it.
Well, you will if he comes around your house.
Confused? There are more surprises in the House of Truth. But rest a while. Now, let's see if you judged my first film correctly. True or false?
The press asked me all sorts of questions. They asked me whether the moon had anything to do with my attacks, and I told them, well, of course it didn't. Then they asked me if I grew big teeth or got hairy during the attacks, and again, I just told them, of course not.
Ramsey had actually got his head plus his arm and shoulder through this aperture and was striking out at the officers.
Every time they write about the story, they always associate me with wolves, but I mean, I've looked at wolves and I don't see any similarity between me and them. The stories in the press about me being a werewolf were totally false and exaggerated. It's true I did suffer from a strange illness, and it's true I did go to the United States for an exorcism to find the cure. But now it's all over, and I really just want to lay this werewolf business totally to rest.
Did I deceive you with my true story? Yes? You must leave now, but consider my other tale. If you visit the House of Truth next week, I promise to reveal the answer.
So for the outcome of that second tale and for 2 more incredible stories, True or False returns at the same time next Friday, 6 o'clock.